I kind of begrudgingly respect just the dedication to not getting better at what you do for a living. Just coast through life.
It probably shouldn't even happen.
If you got it, you got to flaunt it, Acid.
You know what? I got a lot of stuff that I don't want to flaunt, so I just keep it to myself.
Jeremy is really big into the used mattresses. Excellent deal.
He has a used mattress store on the side.
I'm not going to pull the pants down without the pants down cue.
And we found out that Anthony's friends are all 13-year-old boys. Nice.
Clay, how you doing?
Doing a little more poorly after that terrible introduction. I was just fine, to be honest with you.
Hello, Sci-Fi Gangstas. This is the show where we talk about science fiction, video games, and comic books, but really it's just an excuse for me to catch up with my friends and to meet interesting people. I'm Anthony Narr, media scholar and person who just loves deranged clowns, right? And that's what we're talking about here today. We're talking about the Joker. Why is the Joker so popular? Why are there so many iterations of the Joker? That's what we're here to talk about today. And we have a great group of panelists here to discuss that. Before we begin, you can always check us out streaming live on YouTube. Also, we're in podcast form as well. You can always check us out wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Spotify. And once again, if you check us out on Spotify, you can check out the video format on Spotify as well. So many places to check us out. Also, you can go to SciFiGangsters.com. But yeah, today's show, we're talking about the Joker. And we have a group of experts. I'll call them experts in the field on the Joker. And we'll discuss various things about the Joker. Obviously, all three of you, the guests here today, I chose you because we were part of an In Media Res theme week where we discussed the Joker. It was the Transmedia Joker, right? That's the title of the In Media Res theme week. You all wrote articles, and I was like, hey, let's talk about the Joker more on my podcast. And that's what we do because everybody has a podcast. Everybody wants to talk about the Joker. But let's go ahead and get to our panelists. Right now, we're going to start off with Christina Knopf, who is an associate professor at the State University of New York at Cortland. Christy, how you doing?
Fine, thanks. Nice to be here, Anthony.
Well, fantastic. Great to have you on here today. Our next guest is Kyle Hammonds, the Director of Public Speaking at the University of Oklahoma. Kyle, how are you doing?
Been great. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Of course. Great to have you here. And our next guest is Kalervo Sinervo. Is a postdoc at the University of Calgary. Did I get that correct?
Both wrong. University of Calgary and Kalervo Sinervo. But as I told you beforehand, don't worry about it. I'm very happy to be here, having a great time.
You think that I'll be doing this as a bit, and I'm not. Okay, so fantastic. Well, there's our three great panelists. Each of you wrote a short article for In Media Res on the Joker, talking about various things about the Joker, different versions of the Joker. I also wrote a very short article on that as well. Let's go ahead and get to my co-host, Jeremy. Jeremy, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I hate I missed the last Batman discussion, but I guess I hopped in on this one.
That's true. We talked about the Batman. We talked about Batman in general, right? We discussed the article that Will Moon wrote about what the greatest Batman films. He ranked all the Batman films, and he wrote an article for us on SciFiGangsters.com. And once again, every one of his articles is extremely detailed. So you can definitely check that out. He ranked them there. And Jeremy, you missed out on that conversation that we had. All right, well, very good. And of course, the producer of the show, we literally could not do this show without him because I am not smart enough to do this. Acidtrain, Acid, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm actually looking forward to this because the Joker is going to be in the Mortal Kombat tournament as well in Chicago that I'm going to. So I'm representing the Joker video game style. So I'm excited.
Now, do you play the Joker? Is he one of your mains?
He is one of your yeah.
He's one of your mains, as they say in the video game fighting world,
right?
Your mains.
That's right. He's really good, and I'm excited.
Look, I'm hip. I'm cool. I know the terminology.
Sure. After I wrote it down for you. Yeah, good job.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. My students in my video game studies class, they say mains. I'm like, ooh, what's that mean? That's where I got that from. All right. Very good. So there's our panelists here for today, our hosts and our panelists here for today. Once again, we're talking about the Joker. What makes the Joker so special? Why do people like the Joker so much? But we have to start off first by catching up. That's the whole purpose of this show. When I talked to Jeremy 2 years ago, I said, Jeremy, I miss you. It's the pandemic is going on. We need to have a podcast where we can just catch up. So that's what we're going to do first. And I'll go ahead and begin with what's new with me. And Jeremy, you know this. I've been texting you a lot. I've been trying my hardest to get into Star Trek Discovery. I've been trying my hardest to get into it. We've talked about Star Trek Discovery several times on this show. As a huge Star Trek fan, I want to like it. And I have my opinions on Star Trek Discovery are mixed. There are several elements of the show that I really enjoy, particularly all of the changes that they made on season 3. Now, all those changes they made, because in many ways, if you're familiar with Star Trek Discovery, you know that at the season 3 mark, they just decide to kind of do like a mini reboot of the show in many ways. And I love all the new changes that they made to the show. And I'm starting on season 4, and I love the new uniforms. Is anyone here a fan of Discovery? Does anyone watch Discovery? Anybody in here? Am I talking to myself? Okay, I'm talking to myself. I'm the only one that's seen this show? Okay, fantastic. No, as a huge Star Trek fan, I love the new uniforms because the old Discovery uniforms, I always thought they were bland and they really didn't have any connection to older Starfleet uniforms. But these new Starfleet uniforms, they're fantastic. I love everything about it. I also love the new futuristic refit of Star Trek Discovery. It's sleeker. It has some cool elements to it, particularly when the nacelles are not attached. They kind of float on the side, which is kind of a cool element of it as well.
Why?
And just because they can, Jeremy. So Jeremy is one of those toxic fans who just refuses to. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, what you're saying, it fully aligns with my belief that Discovery is just like a abusive lover, right? It changes just a little bit, and you think, oh, they turned a new leaf, and it's going to be good now. And then it just becomes bad again. And you don't ever love it. You just get used to it.
So we've talked about Discovery so much on this show, and I'll just say this one more time about my feelings towards Discovery. There has not been a single episode of Discovery which I feel fits within the top 10 of Star Trek episodes of all time. There's not a single episode where I can say, you know what, this one deserves to be in the top 10 of the best Star Trek episodes of all time, which is really a fault of Star Trek Discovery because it doesn't really do anything new. It's very driven on like a particular narrative that it's desperate to move across. There's not any like side episodes that really can explore the science fiction genre. I do like a lot of things that they're doing with how diverse the cast is. And they're exploring sexuality in the episode and in the show as well. I really do enjoy that. But we'll kind of end it with there because I'm rambling too much on the Star Trek Discovery. And also, they all cry way too much. They just all cry. They cry way too much. Like, it's okay to have an episode where someone cries. It's a powerful moment. Patrick Stewart, my favorite, and Jean-Luc Picard, my favorite character of all time. He's had episodes where he's cried, but every episode you can't have everybody crying every episode. I'm sorry, it kind of ruins it for me. But anyways, we'll move on because I've said too much. We'll go ahead and move on to Christy. We're going to do. Is there anything new with you?
It's hit that busy point of the mid-semester, so I'm just kind of trying to keep my head above water. Grading, advising, all that fun stuff.
Well, fantastic. Is there any shows that you're watching right now? Is there anything you're interested in?
I'm doing the comfort viewing right now to de-stress, so I've been binge watching Futurama for probably the 100th time.
Are you excited about the relaunch of it?
I hope I'm excited about the relaunch of it. I want to be excited. Yeah. Cautiously optimistic is probably more accurate.
Isn't there a lot of controversy around how they recast Bender? Is that correct?
They weren't going to bring back DiMaggio, but they have. So
okay. That voice actor, he's done a lot of characters, right? He's He's had like a lot of. He does Adventure Time. Doesn't he do Adventure Time as well? Like he does a lot of voices.
And he's doing Disenchanted now on Netflix.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't noticed that one yet. I've watched a few episodes of Disenchanted.
And he also did Inside Job, which was Netflix release in October. Delightful conspiracy theory cartoon. Lots of fun.
All right, well, fantastic. Well, we definitely are getting to that midpoint of the semester where we're all grading papers, but then also we have SCMS coming up as well, or at least for me, I have SCMS coming up as well. So kind of getting ready for that as well. Definitely a busy part of the semester. We'll move on to Kyle. What's new with you, Kyle?
Well, I this past week was spring break for me, and so to me that just means more time to like catch up on my research projects rather than going out and doing other stuff. I did get away for a little while to see the Batman. I've gone to see that twice now, and I was very, very impressed with it. Really enjoyed it. So that was the break part of the spring break for me, I guess.
Now, I know you wrote about the Joker, but are you a huge Batman fan?
Oh, yes. Yeah, for sure. I've done several papers over various iterations of Batman, and I've taught classes that are like completely situated in Batman stories and artifacts. So I'm a big fan, and my dissertation is going to be about the Joker. So it's been pretty closely tied in, Batman and Joker and their mythos pretty closely tied into my studies.
Well, I definitely want to hear your opinions on the Joker here, but is it too hard of a question to ask you? Where does this Batman fall? Is it like, who is your favorite Batman? Is that too hard of a question?
It's so difficult to answer right now because we've just had a couple of weeks with the Batman, and we've had decades for most of these other movies and stories. So it's really difficult to see, what will endure about this most recent movie and kind of where it will stick out in my mind. I can say that I anticipate it will be up there for me. And I was very drawn to Robert Pattinson's performance. I think drawing attention to the introverted, reflective, sort of quiet type of Batman who focuses more on the detective skills than on the fighting aspect of crime fighting was a really nice way to bring the character back to what made me fall in love with him in comic books.
Yeah, fantastic. And he does a lot of staring. There's a lot of staring in the Batman. And maybe that's why it's so long, because there's so many scenes where he's just staring at people. But I definitely enjoyed the Batman. I went in not wanting to like it. I went in, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to like this. And I watched it. And me and Jeremy, we went to the movies together. And I turned to you. And what did I say, Jeremy? I said, is it okay that I like this movie?
Yeah, you seem surprised. I expected to like it, and I did like it. I still don't know why he had what the necessity of the eye makeup was. It just seemed like a little bit extra.
It's just cool, man. Sometimes you gotta put some eye makeup on.
Yeah, but it's like, hold on, I can't get suited up yet. I gotta fix myself.
right.
Bruce Wayne can be a little extra.
Batman can be a little extra. That's definitely true. All right. Well, very good. Kalervo Sinervo.
Oh, wow. You hit it. Perfect.
Fantastic, right? I've only been practicing that in my head this entire time.
You should have just not invited me. It's like too much hassle. Yeah, what have I been up to? I also have SCMS coming up. I'm going to be talking about Wizard Magazine on a panel about fandom as lifestyle with my colleagues Ben Wu and Anna Papard. And what have I been watching? This month, I've been watching movies that take place in the future, but specifically trying to watch movies that take place in a future of like a date that's already passed. So yesterday we screened Johnny Mnemonic, which takes place in 2021. So I was very excited to see how they handled the pandemic. And there actually is a pandemic. There's like a disease that's sweeping across the world in the movie, and it's the most gloriously. If you haven't seen Johnny Mnemonic, and you have any sort of like love for a '90s hokum, I highly recommend. It's so '90s. There is a pillar of televisions. There is a CGI dolphin. Keanu Reeves wears like no fewer than 4 different full face visors at different points in the movie. It's just fantastic cyberpunk from a short story by William Gibson, and utterly ridiculous. Dolph Lundgren. I just all I have to say is Dolph Lundgren, and you're there, right? You're salivating. I too went and saw The Batman. I went and saw it on opening day. I enjoyed it. Enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm curious, Anthony, why you went in wanting not to like it or not wanting to like it.
There's a couple of reasons. I'm starting to get a little frustrated with how we are rebooting Batman so quickly now, and I've wanted to like man, I'm just kind of tired of another Batman, and of course, you know, I wasn't crazy about the selecting of Robert Pattinson. I wasn't crazy about that. I also heard some rumors that he was difficult to work with, or he wasn't taking the role seriously, which could have been all lies. So I was expecting it to be sort of like a non-fun Batman, and yes, it's very dark and very moody, but I think he knocked it out of the park. I really feel like he captures the essence of a detective Batman, which we've sort of got little tastes here and there with you know, Christian Bale's portrayal, and Ben Affleck kind of does a little bit of detectiveness sometimes. But this is like a true, like, I'm going to, this is a detective film. I also like the fact that he gets outsmarted in a lot of ways. Like
that's my problem with it.
That's your problem with it? Oh, like, man, I love it.
The world's greatest detective didn't bother to figure out what it was the guy was killed with. Also,
That's
he's
true.
the world's
CSI would do that immediately.
He's also the world's greatest detective, but the Riddler was live streaming all of this. I mean, it was obviously coded, but he was broadcasting all of this online, what he was going to do, and all you need to do is just find the right website and password, which is kind of
That's
silly.
Christian post 9/11 surveillance state Batman is Christian Bale's bailiwick. They can't do Panopticon Batman. That's been done.
That's true. No, but I did enjoy it. I'll just the only criticism I have is it's probably 40 minutes it's 40 minutes too long. It really is. And I felt it. I felt like I was okay, man, this is kind of let's get somewhere, right? But I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed it. So well, there you go. Excellent. And I'm looking forward. I definitely need to check out your panel. What day is your panel?
On the Thursday at like 6 p.m. Eastern.
Well, fantastic. And of course, my panel's on the Capitol insurrectionists, where I'm framing them as fans. All right, moving on. All right, good. Let's go ahead and get to Jeremy, my co-host. Jeremy, what's new?
I watched Nightmare Alley recently, which is Guillermo del Toro's newest movie. It's got Bradley Cooper, Cate Blanchett, Rooney Mara, Willem Dafoe.
Cast.
Handful of people, yeah. And I really liked it. His movies are kind of hit or miss for me, like as far as personal enjoyment. I think they're all well-made movies, but as far as like what I actually like, they're kind of hit or miss. But I really liked it. It's worth a watch.
There's another movie for you to watch. A review by Jeremy. He really liked it. All right, well, very good. Let's go ahead and move on to the producer of the show, Acidtrain. What's new?
I'm still getting ready for a Combo Breaker, which is the fighting game conference that I'm going to in May in Chicago. I've been day and night training and doing all my stuff with the Joker and with Baraka, another player that I do. Prize pool has been up to like $50,000 now, so hopefully I can get a little chunk of that, which will be nice. Looking forward to it. Got the plane tickets, got the Airbnb. I've even got a little bonus tournament that we're doing, which includes a new fight stick, so I'll be doing that as well. So hopefully I can take part of that and win the 5K there. So but I'm honestly looking forward to just playing some of the best of these guys. Like they're the best of the best in the U.S. and a couple of folks from Great Britain and Canada that I watch a good bit. So hopefully I'll at least get to see them. But if I get to play them and lose horribly, I'll be okay with that too. Just to have that opportunity, just to sit next to them and pick their brains and that kind of stuff. So, but watching, I'm finishing up another round of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I think I'm on the last season of that right now. So, but other than that, yeah, just looking forward to Chicago.
So how seriously are you taking your training for it? You like keeping your hands stretched out so they don't cramp up, and like got your stimulant game, and
I've got
all that dialed in.
I have fully customized my fight stick. Brand new buttons, a brand new lever, all top brands, all that good stuff. We actually didn't think Mortal Kombat was going to make it into EVO this year, which is another conference that I kind of want to go to. I don't think I'm going to be able to, but if I do, I'll compete there as well. Combo Breaker is mainly focused on Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, and just to feel like Dragon Ball Z, those kind of things. But there's going to be even more. There's going to be like 40 games there, just because this is the first one they have done, I think, in 2 or 3 years that it's in person. And so they're just bringing it all back, just in, shooting COVID in the face. Of course, you do have to be vaccinated in order to attend, and we all have to wear masks while we're there, which is, it's totally fine. I don't mind all that because I have both of those things, and it's just going to be great. But yeah, I've been working hardcore as far as an old man like me can do. So I'll probably be one of the oldest folks in the tournament. Just trying to keep up with all these young folks. So, but it'll be a good time.
Well, fantastic. You're definitely. It's glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that you've been training. As long as it doesn't get in the way of playing Halo with the squad, right? That's very important. You play Halo with the squad first.
Yeah, I should have just skipped the basketball game last night. That was horrible.
Let's not talk about the Auburn basketball game.
That was terrible.
That was very depressing.
My word.
Depressing game. We're talking basketball now on the show, where we're talking comic books and video games. Is that what we're doing today? We're talking basketball.
Let's not talk basketball.
We're getting all over the place. Well, let's go ahead and get to our topic for today, and that is the Joker. So kind of a quick little overview of how I got every one of you together here today. As part of my assistantship duties at Georgia State University, I run In Media Res. I'm the editor there, and many times I have to fill in some theme weeks because getting other people to submit theme week can be kind of tough. So I'm like, all right, well, let's do one on the Joker, because I've written a couple seminar papers on the Joker. I've been sort of fascinated with the character. I've been fascinated with the film, the 2019 film as well. So I was like, you know what? This seems kind of sort of interesting to me. Maybe we can do a topic on the Joker. I also submitted a panel for Dragon Con. I still haven't heard anything back, Jeremy, on if that got accepted or not, but that would be fantastic if I could have an academic reason for taking off work to go to Dragon Con. That would be fantastic. If you're not familiar with Dragon Con, is anyone familiar with Dragon Con? Have you heard of the term? It's probably one of the biggest conventions, but it's in Atlanta. And we go to it every year, and it's kind of our one big event that we do every year. So being able to do a panel there would be fantastic. So I submitted one on the Joker, sort of like it's kind of the same thing that I wrote about as part of my In Media Res article. Really, the one thing that's fascinating with the Joker is, particularly when it comes to the fan communities that surround the Joker and how diverse these fan communities can be. So when I first wrote a seminar paper, I was focusing primarily on Tumblr, because I was fascinated with how many of the Tumblr pages were focusing on, I guess you could say, the transgressive qualities of the film The Joker, the 2019 film The Joker. And obviously, we can sort of point to sort of the problematic elements of the film The Joker, primarily with his use of the gun and everything like that. But these particular fan pages were focusing on themes of transformance and acceptance of mental disability and sort of a rejection of society's oppression, sort of like this fantasy of breaking free, almost like this modernistic quality that you can interpret from the film The Joker, which fascinated me because when I first saw The Joker, obviously the first things that come to my mind when I watched the film was its connections with incel culture. So when I was watching it, I kind of interpreted it as an incel story in a lot of ways. And then I was looking at these Tumblr pages, and that is not what they were getting out of it. Like, it's very clear. And it was almost like this celebration of difference and this celebration of breaking from the confines of normative perceptions of sexuality and ability. So that fascinated me. So kind of an interesting thing. But then obviously we can sort of point to other perceptions of relationship with. Am I losing my stability here for a second?
You just froze for a second, but you're good now. You're good.
Fantastic. No, so obviously, you point to using the Joker in spreading conspiracy theories and all these other problematic fan communities that surround the Joker. So I thought to myself, what is it about the Joker where you can have this fault line of these drastically different interpretations? Is it just because that's what fans do? They just pick what they want out of a popular cultural text and just make their own meanings out of it? Of course, that could be an answer. But there's something fascinating about the Joker to me where we keep coming back to this particular character and we keep retelling the character in different ways where when the Joker first comes into the scene, he's this stereotypical epitome of evil. We could point to the otherness of the Joker and these sort of like the monstrous qualities of the Joker. But then he sort of develops into this more complex character with the Joker in 2019, where he's more of an anti-hero in a lot of ways. But yeah, that's kind of where I came from. I don't have an answer to the question, right? So that's why it's a conference paper and not an actual like published paper, because I don't have an answer to that question. What is it about the Joker that sort of leads to these diverse communities? So that's kind of where I'm going to stop there. And I want to move on to Christy here and just kind of get your opinion on the Joker in general.
Well, I guess I should confess that the Joker is not my favorite villain. I like the Scarecrow the best.
Oh, right.
I think he's the most interesting. For me, the Joker is more interesting because of his relationships with Harley Quinn and now Punchline, which was kind of the approach that I took. But whether we're talking about Joker or his girlfriends, I do think that the complexity of the clown motif really kind of captures all of that stuff that you were just talking about. The clown traditionally is this figure of both humor and horror, of these liminal spaces, and it gives us this room to read into the Joker what we want there to be, whether we want to see him as edgy and he's the only person that sort of gets the joke that is life, or whether we want to see him as a celebration of difference, or whether we just want to kind of delight in this kind of ideal evil. There's that space in part because of the fact that he is the Joker and he does have that clown motif that gives us that room.
Now, I have a question for you. You did mention Harley Quinn. The relationship between Joker and Harley Quinn it's obvious it's an abusive one. And there are several different storylines that kind of branch off from that. Of course, me being the video game guy, Jeremy, I don't know if you've played Injustice 2, the storyline going on with that, but that relationship between the Joker and Harley Quinn started off as abusive, and then she broke away from that and ended up going, joining I don't want to say joining the good side, but fighting with the good side in order to get away from that relationship. I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on the relationship between Harley Quinn and Joker.
I think that relationship is a big part of Harley Quinn's popularity and her longevity with fans, right from the animated series and her appearance there. I do think that there is something very relatable for a lot of people in Harley Quinn's situation. And there is definitely something very empowering in her breaking away from the Joker and going her own direction, both as a criminal and as the good guy in different ways. But she's sort of doing her own thing now. And, I think that's really resonating with people. And I'm kind of interested to see where his new girlfriend, Punchline, goes, because she's like a dark Harley Quinn, but yet also entirely different in terms of the dynamic of the relationship. She's kind of more the woman behind the man figure than Harley was. So it'll be interesting to see what her longevity is like.
Did anyone want to chime in on that?
I mean, I really loved your piece, Christy, and the idea of clowns. The idea of like the finishing thought of like the quote of like what not only the makeup isn't about what they reveal, but also what they conceal, and the idea of the clown as icon. And I know like a small handful of professional clowns, and it just made me start thinking about like just even though the Joker is like the most famous clown in the world, he so rarely gets invoked or like paired at like it's sort of only nobody ever delves deeper into the concept of the clown because it's such a balloon concept in and of itself. And it's made me, I mean, like I was thinking about it this afternoon. I was like, oh man, I actually just messaged this afternoon, like one of my friends who is a lifelong clown and like circus director. I live in Montreal, so I know a handful of circus people, and asked for his take on how Joker connects to clowns and what his like reflections are on that. I'm still waiting to hear back, but it really did make me think about the idea of like a community of like real people who find themselves sort of being represented in a certain way. And clowns historically have this problem, right? But with the Joker, especially with like the 2019 film, there's this like a folk here. I mean, Anthony, when you were talking about what is it that makes these different communities sort of, and I sort of feel like you look at like the Heath Ledger Joker and the sort of fandom that grew up around that during like, the late 2000s, early 2010s. I always looked at that the same way I looked at people watching like Pacino in Scarface. And I'm like, oh, there's a certain number of people who are going to watch Tony Soprano and go like, that's cool. That's something to emulate, even though the narrative thrust of it is like this, even when this person's doing something that is empowering to them, they still look like a total jagoff. So that's sort of how I felt about like the Heath Ledger thing. It was a very compelling, interesting character, but when people were emulating it, I was sort of like, and people were like, oh, I love his philosophy. I was just sort of like, I feel like you didn't finish the movie, like and follow the philosophy to its natural conclusion. But in the 2019 Joker, it's utterly validating for like whatever philosophical precepts Arthur Fleck is like supposed to embody. He becomes a folk hero. Like it is a popular uprising of people who like on the streets. He is the Joker becomes the symbol for like resistance to like moneyed elites, which is like very, very I mean, like I thought it was a stretch when they tried to do that with Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, but like in Joker, I just thought it was utterly fascinating. And then the fact that there was the same sort of following in there, I'm like, well, yes, this is what you can expect when the movie like the narrative even validates it. But I hadn't gone, Anthony, your piece opened up a whole world for me because I hadn't gone and looked at the way in which this fandom was being interpreted and the places that it was going. It's very interesting that the various readings people have of
and obviously, sorry, just real quick, obviously, Tumblr and 4chan are completely different spaces, so it makes sense that those two spaces would have drastically different interpretations of the character. But I find it fascinating that you can have a film where you have these drastically different interpretations of what the character represents, And maybe it's because we tend to isolate moments in a media text and we go, all right, in this particular scene, he's doing this. And I like this because it depicts my feelings about the world. And when you look at like a particular instance where he's just putting on makeup and it's like, oh, well, it's kind of gender bending and it's sort of performative and it's sort of defiant. But then when you look at the subway scene where he's killing somebody with a gun, it's a whole another element to it, which is also very fascinating. But Christy, go ahead.
I was just going to add that folk hero element that's been parsed out a little bit more in the comics since as well, with that sort of the people uprising and putting on their own versions of Joker makeup as part of that self-othering, but in a way that gives them a sense of belonging with this community that is in opposition to the elites. So that's been played out a little bit further as well now.
That's the transmedia part of it too. Like since the movie came out, it's all follow the leader in transmedia, right? So,
yeah, self-othering is a fascinating word because fan communities are often defined by a feeling of otherness, a feeling of being apart, being deviants from the mainstream culture. So it's fascinating that sort of like a performative otherness would be, so it makes sense that would be a part of it, right? In so many ways.
It's establishing in groups and out groups.
Which we can sort of point to reactionary culture, which I do in my dissertation when I'm talking about reactionary culture, right? The desire to self-other when you're not the other is fascinating. But yeah, well, that sort of wraps up that conversation there. We'll go ahead and move on to Kyle. Just anything you want to talk about at all?
Oh, that's so broad.
Anything you want, Kyle. Anything.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about some of the conversation that we were having so far, and the piece that I wrote for In Media Res, I think maybe touches a little bit on how these different types of interpretations come about. That's actually what my dissertation is going to be over, is the interpretive strategies that bring people to different understandings of the character. And you mentioned, places like Tumblr and 4chan are different spaces. And I would argue that there's probably different cultural frames operating in each of those spaces that makes a difference in terms of what interpretive tools people are bringing to their communication there. And so that's kind of what I meant in the piece when I talked about the difference between magic consciousness, mythic consciousness, perspectival consciousness. All of that has to do with the way that we think about the world, how much of the self is implicated in our actions toward others. And so the self-othering concept seems to fit really closely with more contemporary perspectival ways of thinking about things. But what that means for communication is that we tend to be maybe a little more alienated when we take that perspective. And so finding others who hold similar beliefs and values, such as a fan group or maybe an internet community that one would come across on, say, Tumblr or 4chan, that helps to meet some of the needs that are left unmet when we take on those more perspectival points of view. So the frames, the primary modes of consciousness, I think, help with parsing out the different ways that people cultivate interpretive tools, and maybe that forwards the conversation about interpretation a little more there.
Yeah, maybe it is simply just, community formation and using popular tech, like, because fans love using popular cultural texts to create a fan community and to create meaning. And fans can interpret text in various ways. That's definitely part of it. But I'm just wondering, like, obviously we could kind of point to the Punisher, where the Punisher has been appropriated by reactionary communities and sort of like the pro police mentality, where you have a lot of police officers having like Punisher badges or patches, when the character of the Punisher, like, it's supposed to be a commentary on vigilantism, but they're using it as a justification for police brutality is fascinating, right? So maybe it's just that. Maybe it's just because the character is so popular and it's become such a big part of our mythos that we can interpret it in various ways. Maybe that is it.
I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
I also think that that's a relatively recent development, right? That's part of perspectivity is splintering interpretations and individuals feeling like control over particular interpretations belongs to them, right? Instead of belonging to a broader interpretive community or belonging to the content creator or what have you, right? So I think our increased focus on individual perspective has made it a lot easier for us to kind of splinter what we believe the meaning about these characters are, which maybe speaks to the point you were just making as well.
You know, I think that I mean, I loved your suggestion of a fourth Joker that oscillates between the other three. I feel like it's very in tune with arguments that I try to make about transmedia, which is that we're certain expressions of transmedia just are able to collapse all of the history in on itself, which also goes to this sort of Punisher thing. Because Anthony, your comment that he's supposed to be a commentary on vigilantism, I'm like, well, when, like, I like at first perhaps, but like, you know, he had his own series. He was in the 80s and 90s. He was teamed up with Spider-Man. I just watched the other day an old episode of the Fox Kids Spider-Man where it's like Punisher is wearing a turquoise outfit and has a headband on, and he's just like, his whole thing is he doesn't mind using deadly force. And then, you know, the only Punisher I ever really read was like the Garth Ennis Punisher, where he's just like, it's like, it makes it very clear to you that he just loves killing. Like, he just really, really likes to murder people. This is what he enjoys. And it's also a satire. Like, it's not really a comment on,
that's every Garth Ennis comment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a satire. And if Garth Ennis is making commentary, it's almost never about the Punisher as a person. All of Garth Ennis's commentary is about, like, America or our culture and the way that I think the first issue of his Punisher run was like, he was talking about how, like, don't believe Giuliani that the city's cleaned up. You know, it's like a rant about New York or something like that. So I just think that, like, one of the reasons that the Joker can be so many things to so many people is it's just longevity. You know, like, this is my dissertation was not about the Joker specifically, about Gotham City and transmedia, specifically like game expressions of Gotham City. But it was sort of spending years going through just like trying to track down like every single thing. I'm like, oh, it's sort of, you really can do whatever you want with these things, and that's why, you know, my focus on the Joker is less like, oh, what is he as a character? It's like, well, what is he as like sort of a brand extension? And that goes to what Kyle was saying about the idea of people having like ownership, because that's sort of the thrust of like a transmedia complex is like that they want you to feel like a real sense of ownership over it. And they're just the stewards. They're just the people who, you know, Warner's is just they're not in control of this. You're in control of this as the fans, or their visionary director Todd Phillips is in control of it, or their visionary director Matt Reeves. You know. So.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. At what point does commentary just become just perpetuating the very thing that you're supposed to be commentating? Like, if you're continually having the Punisher kill people over and over again, and that just becomes part of the character, then is it really a commentary anymore? Probably not, right? Then it's just, you know, just a character that just loves killing,
Yeah. At what point did Game of Thrones stop making like commentary on like the graphicness of sexual assault and just started wallowing in rape culture? You know, like I would argue it was this season. Maybe you would argue it was an earlier season. You know, but either way, it's sort of repetition is the thing that like, and I think that's also part of the necessity to create new interpretations of the character is to, because it's like just a symbol that you can fill up with whatever you want. The idea of like punchline is so interesting to me because Harley Quinn has, I think one of the reasons she's become like the fourth tentpole character for DC is that we've seen her, like her representation change, and at first it was through exploitation, and then it was through like empowerment. And I just wonder, is Punchline going to be able to do that, or are we still going to be like fixed on one idea of who Punchline is and what her story is 20 years from now? Yeah, I think that most of these characters, it's only when it can still be successful with the exact opposite interpretation that it just had that it becomes one of these like icons.
What do you think, Christy? Do you think Punchline is just the new version of Harley Quinn, or do you think they're kind of doing something new with the character?
I don't think she's just the new version of Harley Quinn. I mean, there is that element to her. She has been sort of exploited a little bit. There's almost a Stockholm syndrome kind of aspect to her character. She was so traumatized by the Joker that she began to identify with him. But there's also, I think, a little bit more of a political bent to her character. She is now one of these people taking up the Joker motif in opposition to the elite and to the system as it is. She's very much echoing what many fans of the Heath Ledger Joker, for example, really saw as being that this anarchist approach to fixing things. The only way we can save the city is to burn it down and start all over. And she's kind of picked up that same idea. I'm not sure how long they'll be able to run with that and make it interesting. I haven't been loving her story arc in the Joker right now, but there is potential from sort of a gender perspective on the character. I'm really intrigued at the notion of kind of the subversive female comedienne motif as being the punchline, the part of a joke that's the funny thing. And so I'll be interested to see if it can be a more interesting character. But right now I'm not too optimistic on that.
That's fascinating what you just said, and maybe we're kind of getting closer to this question that I asked previously, and that is, it's the burn it down mentality that the Joker represents, right? So if we want to talk about marginalized communities who feel like there's a need for revolution, like there's a need to burn it down because we're oppressed and we need to be able to break free from the system, right? But also reactionaries also want to burn it down to go back to the way things were because the progress and modernity are changing the social hierarchy. So both groups want to burn it down, but they obviously the goals are different, right? Which is kind of interesting. So there's that element to it, which is kind of very fascinating that you kind of made me think a little bit there.
And that kind of speaks to the issue of commentary that you were just discussing, particularly with the types of commentary that are meant to be satirical, even dark satire. Satire only works if people recognize what the message is supposed to be. But we bring our mental baggage with us to the understanding of those things. So when the Colbert Report was still on Comedy Central, a satire of conservative talk shows, it was making fun of the conservative talk show format. At least that's what liberals saw. Conservatives saw it as something that was sort of poking fun at them, but as in a way that was designed to promote conservative ideals. They didn't see it as commentary against conservatism. They saw it as being promotional of it. So that's one of the reasons that I think sometimes the commentary, like in The Punisher or the Joker, is misinterpreted and sort of misused over time. You know, satire is repetition with a difference, but we don't always catch the difference in reading those things.
Oh, fantastic. Kalervo, let's go ahead and get to you. What's one thing you want to bring up?
Yeah, I guess like, so again, my thing is thinking less about the Joker as a character and more about the Joker as like a function of something else. And I was it was sparked off a thing for me, Anthony, when you said like the burn it down mentality, and I'm like, when did the burn it down mentality? I started immediately thinking about that, because it's not always been that way with the Joker, right? Like I'm like, okay, so literally in The Dark Knight, Alfred has a whole monologue where he's like, some people just want to watch the world burn, and like I immediately thought of that, and obviously there is a sub threat. The way that the Joker's being interpreted in the Joaquin Phoenix Todd Phillips film is as someone who wants to burn it down, but like really what he's doing is like really petty revenge shit, right? Like he goes and kills like I'm sorry, the movie came out like 2.5 years ago, spoilers. He goes and kills Thomas Wayne because he thinks Thomas Wayne is his father. He kills Robert De Niro's character, what? Because he made fun of him on television? There's no like revolutionary purpose to that. You can't say this like old hacky Johnny Carson character is the person oppressing the masses or anything like that. But he gets interpreted by all the people around him as wanting to burn it down. I think back to like Jack Nicholson's character, and I'm like, did he want to burn it down? I know that he was like, wait till they get a load of me. Yeah, he kind of did want to burn it down. He got the money and then just like threw it away, kind of thing. The Joker that I wrote about, which was from the Lego Batman movie, he wasn't like anarchy. At the beginning of the movie, he's like, I will be taking over the city. It's like, no one questions why he's going to do that. And he's, more than anything else, he's motivated by just wanting Batman's attention, which is like, they really took a bunch of other versions of the character from both the comics and films and games, and made that the only thing that was about him, to make him less threatening for audiences, right? Like, he doesn't want to hurt anyone. He just wants the person he loves to admit that he's an important person in their lives. And which also encourages the audience to absolutely sympathize with this character when, oh my gosh, you realize that that's based on like these other characterizations of it, where it's like this sick stalker shit, where he's just like, where you know, he's like, I'm gonna murder half the people in Gotham City and cause total anarchy because you complete me. And I do it just for like, it's not just for the lulz, it's for your attention too. But when I mean like the burn it down, like, so that's like a totally different thing that has nothing to do with burning it down. And then I think back to like, you know, the Dick Sprang era of Joker, where it's like, you know, so many of the interpretations we're talking about, there's this like, going back to like Christie's essay, there's a suggestion of this like clownish jokey thing, and then it's punctuated by something macabre and horrific, right? That just comes out of nowhere. Also a compliment from like Kyle and Anthony's pieces. And when you think back to like Joker in the 50s and 60s, there's nothing threatening about it. He was just like, he was like, I'll escape from Arkham Asylum by putting a duck on my head and like having a duck pair. There's nothing scary about that. He's a man swimming underwater with a duck snorkel attached to his face. He doesn't turn that duck into like, it doesn't like, he doesn't use it to stab someone afterwards, you know? Like, what was it? There's like, the best Joker story of all time was Joker's Boners, right? Where it's just like Joker keeps on causing screw ups, and the press keeps referring it to his boners with totally different meaning. So I wonder. When we talk about this burn it down mentality, I'm like, okay, well, when are we going to be done with that mentality? Is that mentality representative of like something else? Because I totally had the same response as you, Anthony, when I saw the Joaquin Phoenix movie. I was like, this is like incel culture. And then obviously it's hard not to then live through like the insurrection, like January 6th, and not also think of some of the final scenes of that film too. And maybe that's just me as like a progressive on the progressive left, that I'm just like, it's very easy for me to imagine my political rivals as a mad mob worshiping at the feet of a sick demagogue. But I just, what comes first? Is it Joker as representing something that's in the zeitgeist, or is there an aspect of it where it like perpetuates that zeitgeist and like creates that creates it, or maybe it's just like a cycle and a continuum and it's just like continues moving along?
I think as long as we keep the all it takes is one bad day element of the character alive, that burn it down mentality is going to kind of be part of that. And because the Killing Joke keeps getting resurrected over and over and over again in the stories, in the transmedia adaptations, all it takes is one bad day is still now a very central part of the character. And as long as that's there, I think the burn it down is the next step in many regards, because if all it takes is one bad day, then, you know, any of us are at that burn it down point.
Yeah, the Joker represents a primal scream, and it's justified if the day is bad enough to have that primal scream. Interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And all it takes is one bad day is such a scary thing to say nowadays, right? I mean, we can sort of point to so many examples of mass shootings, the Capitol insurrection, and we could kind of point to all these, like, all it takes is one bad day, and we could point to it. And by the way, you're not the only one who connects the problematic elements to the Joker and the Capitol insurrection. Like, I see that as well. Like, I see those connections primarily when it comes to
not a one-to-one. It's just like the imagery. Watching the insurrection reminded me of it a little bit.
There's overlap. There's a Venn diagram that we can sort of point to. And I'm wondering if a lot of it has to do with the gun. Like, I keep coming back to the use of the gun. If it was a knife, would it change things? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. If his weapon of choice was a knife, would it be so compelling would it resonate so much with reactionaryism?
I don't necessarily understand the distinction, like, because the Joker's used guns in previous iterations. So, like, what is it about a gun that you think is different from an imagery perspective?
Yeah, so to answer that question, I think a lot of it has to do with how much it resonates with the good guy with the gun mentality, the good guy with the gun myth, which is so prominent in pro-gun groups and communities and reactionary rhetoric. This idea that I need to be prepared because at any moment I need to be able to defend myself from evil, and therefore I need to have a gun to defend myself. And that good guy with a gun myth resonates so much with the Joker. If you watch the Joker as the good guy with a gun story, like, you can see why people would gravitate towards that, because he quite literally is someone who's picked on, and we have people in the subway who are picking on somebody else, and then he sort of protects that person by laughing when he wasn't wanting to laugh. Then they start picking on him. They would have, obviously they would have assaulted him. He has a gun. He defends himself, and he's justified in being able to kill him with a gun, which fits so well with that myth. Yeah,
and everyone he kills in that movie, right? Like, I don't remember it I've only seen it the once, but like, it doesn't everyone he killed in that movie like was abuse him in some way, right? Like he lets he kills the one guy from his work, but he lets the other guy survive, right? Like, isn't that right? He lets the other guy out of his apartment, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just view it differently because I mean I take everything at face value, right?
Yeah.
The character is obviously a psychopath, so I don't see like he's not a good guy with a gun to me. He's just a psychopath
Yep.
using what tools he has available.
In my opinion, the Joker using a gun, the gun is a toy for him. The gun is a toy because if you look at all the Batmans and all the different variations of the Joker, I mean, video game, movie, comic, whatever it is, the gun, I mean, every once in a while, the gun shoots out a little flag that says bang. It's all like a little, or it shoots something stupid, like a firework, or that's
a character. Everything is a toy, right?
Yeah, it's
like,
a
he's not.
It's a
that's
toy.
what psychopathy is not knowing the difference between.
Yeah, the Joker's use of a gun, at least for me, from my perspective of this, is nothing but a toy for him. Like it's a potential fear thing, and then all of a sudden it's a joke, or it's a fear thing all of a sudden resulting in death. Like it's almost like a Two-Face kind of thing. So it's a coin flip, right? Is it going to shoot you, or is it just going to throw out a little bitty flag that says bang on it? Like it's so, I don't know, for the Joker to not use a gun, and what Anthony was saying about using a knife, I don't think a knife would do justice for that. I think the gun was definitely the way to go as far as the character is concerned.
Go ahead, Kyle.
I do think this is a cinematic evolution for the character because he doesn't really use guns to threaten people in previous films. Like he carries guns sometimes, and maybe as like a vague form of intimidation, but it's, in The Dark Knight, it's explosives and knives. With Jack Nicholson's character, he always has the hench people going around doing the actual hurting folks and stuff. And then, of course, with the Cesar Romero version, you don't really have to worry about him murdering a bunch of people. So there's that part. And I do think maybe this has to do with a difference in the way that we make meaning about things. Because if you use something like a knife, that's a direct extension of yourself. You have to get up close. In some ways, you become a part of the other person when you are attacking them, right? So it's a highly sort of symbolic and ritualistic way of imposing threat. A gun is very impersonal. There is an enormous amount of distance. Killing someone with a gun, I mean, may or may not be an enormous amount of distance, but compared to a knife, it's more likely that you have the distance there that you don't necessarily need. You don't have to connect yourself to the other person in order to annihilate them, right? And so, to me, that corresponds with the difference between having a more communal orientation to how we make meaning and imposing threat with an extension of the self versus everything being a little more individualistic, a little more impersonal, and wanting to impose threat from afar.
No, I 100% agree with you, Kyle. I think there is a huge difference between the knife and the gun. It's far more intimate. The stabbing with someone with a knife is far more intimate. And there's also a little bit of sexual innuendo when it comes to stabbing someone with a knife, and as well, right? You're penetrating somebody with the knife, and we can go into psychoanalysis all day. And when I say psychoanalysis, I don't understand that at all.
I'll just disagree, and we won't get into it because I think the gun, as far as the Joker is concerned, is the extension of him, and no matter how far it is, it's still. I don't know. It's still an extremely personal thing for him, depending on whether he's going to shoot you or not. So, but that's just my opinion.
I do agree that both are very phallic, right? If we're going to go in this direction, right, both are phallic. Let
me give you an example.
Like a masculine, like recapturing masculine power.
I'm not going with that. Okay,
which is such a big part of the Joker.
It kind of is, but I mean, okay, so let's look at the original Batman with Michael Keaton and that Joker. Okay, so one of his Do you remember when he pulls out the gun and it's got the long, you know, I mean, and then he shoots down the you know, I mean,
the silliest pistol in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. So
I think you're onto something though, Acid. I don't disagree with you. What I'm saying is the Joker is like, it's the transmedia element of the Joker. It allows for these drastically different interpretations of the character from Jack Nicholson, where it's comical and the gun is just used for jokes and humor. Heath Ledger doesn't use it. He does use a gun. He does, but he doesn't attack the Batman with the gun, right? But the gun for Joker 2019 is such an integral part for his transformation, right? It's the catalyst for him becoming the victim to him reclaiming his masculine dominance is by using the gun. So that's kind of that's the one thing I'm pointing to. And we could kind of keep talking about the use of the gun all day, but that's kind of what I was kind of pointing to and how that resonates so much with the myths of gun rights activists. Kalervo, did you have something?
Yeah, I think it's interesting the way that your point and Kyle's point go together. That like maybe I mean, what I'm reading from you is that if you put a knife in his hand in that movie in the 2019 movie instead, it would be much harder to create him as a hero because it is a more shocking, disruptive idea. The idea that you would have to apply that pressure and put that force on somebody, whereas like people are much more rarely killed by someone thrusting a knife into them than they are by like being shot. So like it's interesting that it allows for him to be like hero, like lionized in that way and speak to a certain public in that way. And I don't think it necessarily like contradicts the things that Acidtrain is saying, but I wanted to actually sort of shift. We have not mentioned Jared Leto at all, and I feel like I would be bereft if we didn't talk about like the Joker who has the word damage tattooed on his forehead. If we didn't talk about like I don't know how you describe that Joker. Just Jared Leto's off the wall performance Joker. I've always wanted to see like a dinner party with Jared Leto's biggest over the top characterizations. The Gucci Joker, the dreamy guy from Blade Runner.
and also to kind of build off of that, what is it about the Jared Leto Joker that makes everybody hate him? Like, what is it? Like the performance of that particular Joker, why does everybody hate him? And why does everybody love Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix? What is it about their performance that everybody loves and Jared Leto's? Is it just something simply as like it's corny and terribly performed, or is there something else there? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
I think it felt like they like having him be ancillary, right? Having him be like a tertiary character in the film was sort of an issue. I was certainly annoyed by Jared Leto going like that. That certainly grated on me. But like, I was ready to be this sort of like, that isn't a Joker that's like, I want to watch the world burn, right? Like that's a Joker who like what little we see of the character is a guy who like runs the Gotham, like is very much the Brian Azzarello Joker 2008. If anyone has read that Joker comic, where he's like a gangster, like a terrifying gangster with like a motif, you know. And what he is about the same sort of pursuits of like money and power that any other sort of classic underworld mobster figure is about. But I think that like, I mean, I'm not sitting here in like defense of that character. I mean, like, we live in a society after all. But it's but I think that like people, it's hard to say people like hated that version of the Joker. People just hated that movie a lot. Like, people really hated that movie. So it's sort of like the successful versions go with the successful things. Also, like this really weird. What I found very interesting about that from a transmedia perspective was that the casting of Jared Leto in that role was like when Warner's was trying to build out their own version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, went totally against the previous decisions that had been made with casting. That like the teases of the Joker we saw in like Batman v Superman, where it's like he's got like, I guess, like the armor up and it's like jokes like the Joker is like a baby kid, and Ben Affleck is like an old Batman who's been at this for like 20 years, and Jared Leto is just like way younger than that, you know, like it sort of felt like they forgot the way it was supposed to connect into a larger world, and then there's barely anything of the character, it's easy not to like. One of the issues that whole movie had was that no one got enough screen time for you to care about them at all. You know, the only way to handle a cast that big is to give them all their own movies and then bring them together at once. You don't need to, you know, the way that Disney did it, or turn it all into a joke, right? And like everybody gets their own little human, like the way James Gunn did it. That was interesting too.
All right, well, fantastic. Well, I know we're sort of running long here, so Jeremy, we'll get to you. Is there anything you want to say?
No, I have nothing to add other than they tend to cast good actors for the Joker, and that's about all I like about the character. I don't identify with him in any particular way.
Well,
do you have a favorite though?
So it's hard to say. So Heath Ledger kind of has the Nirvana effect going for him. By passing away so shortly after doing it, you know, it sticks out in your mind, and and it was a fantastic performance. So I'd have to say, from a, you know, just a acting perspective of watching someone, you know, at their craft, it would be him. I do love Jack Nicholson, just everything he does. So personal enjoyment, I like him a lot.
All right. I'll go for Heath Ledger as my vote. I actually do not like Joaquin Phoenix. I just don't like the Joker 2019. I just do not like the film. The more I watch it, and I've written about it, the more I don't like it. But I do like Heath Ledger. Asa, we'll go on and get to you. Is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, I'm kind of want to take this in a quick but other direction, just because I'm the video game guy. Richard Epcar is the voice of the Joker in Mortal Kombat 11. He has done a phenomenal job. His resume is, it goes back to like, I think 1980 or something. It's ridiculous. He's done stuff for Street Fighter. He's done stuff for Mortal Kombat. He's done stuff for, let's see, I think it was, Power Rangers. It's crazy. But anyway, as far as voice actors go, of course, Mark Hamill would be my favorite Joker voice of all time. But when it comes to the video game genre, Richard did a phenomenal job with this. And if you haven't seen it or heard it yet, I encourage you to just go to YouTube and just go to like the Joker intros for Mortal Kombat 11, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. He did a phenomenal job. But just looking at the people, just some of the people who have voiced over the Joker. Brent Spiner voiced over the Joker at one point. It's just crazy to see. Zach Galifianakis, however you say that, I don't know. When he did the Lego Batman one. It's just,
so you get Galifianakis right. But it's just all the other names?
It's all the other names. It's all the other names.
Yes.
But I mean, we've been looking at, some of the actors that have just kind of taken Joker and run with it. I mean, what about some of these voice actors that have taken the Joker and just run with it? I mean, they have done, most of them, I think, have done a phenomenal job. I mean, especially Richard, being the Mortal Kombat fan and everything. So, give the praise where it's due, right? But yeah, I encourage you to just YouTube it, just to check it out, just to see what you think, and let me know. So.
All right, well, very good. We'll go ahead and end this episode by saying our favorite Jokers. Mine's Heath Ledger. Jeremy, yours is Heath Ledger as well.
Sure.
There you go. Acid, who's your favorite?
Jack Nicholson, all day.
Jack Nicholson. Kyle, who's your favorite?
Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger. Christy, what's your favorite?
Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill's out there. Good one. Calvero.
I'll go Mark Hamill too.
Mark Hamill as well. Oh, fantastic.
Although
All right, excellent.
in
That's
video games, the Arkham Origins guy I thought did better than Mark Hamill. The guy who played Sonic the Hedgehog or Ezio or whatever. Yeah.
There you
Also
go. There's a hot take. Hot take there. All right, that's
On
our
the
show
internet.
for today. We talked about the Joker. We had a very interesting conversation there. Once again, before we go, you can always check us out on YouTube. We're streaming live there. Also, we're in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check us out at SciFiGangsters.com. For Christina Knopf, for Kyle Hammonds, for Kalervo Sinervo, Acidtrain, and Jeremy, I'm Anthony Dinar. Goodbye, everybody.